Welcome back. On this exciting program, we'll be discussing and uncovering in great depth Napoleon Hill's Lesson 4 entitled Going the Extra Mile. We have a power trio who really know and understand firsthand the extraordinary value and distinction that results in going the extra mile as outlined by Napoleon Hill. On the behalf of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, it is our great pleasure and honor of introducing our dynamic panel of guests, and they are Don Green, Dr. Dilip Abisakara, and Dr. Tony Alessandra. A resident of Wise, Virginia, the birthplace of Napoleon Hill, Don Green brings nearly 45 years of banking, finance, and entrepreneurship experience to his role as executive director of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. His first youthful business venture was charging admission to see his pet bear. Yes, the living, growling kind. Since 2000, Green has traveled worldwide and used his finance skills to grow the Foundation's funds in order to continue the Foundation's educational outreach to prisons. Green has both modeled leadership skills as a CEO and taught them through the PMA Science of Success course at the University of Virginia College at Wise. Don specializes in discussing his personal experience in leadership and providing audiences with proven methods of applying Dr. Hill's success philosophy to business. He was recently featured in a presentation on the importance of entrepreneurship in a National Economy Day by Dr. Peter Yun at the United Nations Forum. And joining Don Green is Dr. Dilip Abisakara, and Dr. Dilip, as he is popularly known by his clients, served as international president of Toastmasters International during the year of 2005 and 2006. Toastmasters, of course, is the world's leading volunteer organization for helping people develop communication and leadership skills. He was a recipient of the Accredited Speakers designation by Toastmasters International in recognition of the professional level speaking skills. He is also a recipient of Toastmasters International highest recognition for the Distinguished Toastmasters Award and received a presidential citation for outstanding service to the organization. Author of the book, The Path of the Genie, Your Journeys to the Heart's Desire, Dr. Dilip is a certified DISC trainer on human behavioral styles. He is on the speaking circuit for the Institute of Management Studies, as well as for Vistage International, the world's largest CEO organization. He also serves as the strategic advisor for the president at Central Penn College and has been an adjunct faculty member in the areas of oral communication and interpersonal communication for Central Penn College and Eastern University School of Professional Studies. An immigrant from Sri Lanka, Dr. Dilip put himself through college by excelling in a number of sales jobs, including selling crystal, cookware, and china, and selling books door to door. His sales training introduced him to the life-changing power of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, where he learned the timeless principles of success. And our third guest is Dr. Tony Alessandra, who helps company and salespeople turn prospects into promoters by going the extra mile with their customers. Dr. Alessandra earned his Ph.D. in marketing in 1976 from Georgia State University and is the president of the Assessment Business Center, a company that offers online 360 degrees assessments. He is a prolific author with 27 books translated into over 50 languages and is featured in over 50 audio-video programs and films. Recognized by Meetings and Convention magazine as one of America's most electrifying speakers, Dr. Alessandro was inducted into the Speakers Hall of Fame in 1985. In 2009, he was inducted as one of the legends of the speaking profession. And in 2010, 11, and 12, he was selected as one of the top 5 marketing speakers by Speaking.com. In 2010, Tony was elected into the inaugural class of the Sales Hall of Fame. In 2012, he was voted one of the top 50 sales and marketing influencers. And in 2012, Dr. Tony was voted as the #1 world's top communication guru. In 1966, Tony's first sales job was selling Salad Master cookware. His target territory was the Jersey Shore, and his target market was single women aged 18 to 25 who were working full-time. As part of his training program, he and the rest of the sales reps listened to Napoleon Hill's recording on Think and Grow Rich. It motivated Tony to break sales records the summer of 1966 and beyond. So this is our Power Trio. Gentlemen, welcome to this exciting program.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, it took some time to go through that introduction, but it was well worth going through it. But, hey, this is exciting. We're going to be discussing on today's program going the extra mile. And what a powerful principle. What is going the extra mile exactly? Maybe, perhaps, Dilip, we could start with you.
Yes, going the extra mile. Napoleon Hill defined that as rendering more and better service than you are paid for. And he said sooner or later you will receive compound interest from your investment. Really, going the extra mile, I believe, is fueled by your vision of who you are and what the world is about and what you're called to be. For example, going the extra mile is really fueled for me by joy and passion in what I do. And if I find meaning in what I do, going the extra mile is a natural expression of that.
Beautiful. Tony, would you like to add to that? And Don, of course, feel free to jump in and offer your thoughts.
Yeah, this is Tony. To me, the extra mile is that age-old saying, what goes around comes around. And it's really delivering incredible service, both quantity and quality of service, with the right attitude. And as a result, you get paid back many times over. And it may not be from the person or organization that you go the extra mile for. It may come from some other source. That whole goes around, comes around. So I've lived my life according to that philosophy, both in business and personally, going the extra mile, doing more than what is expected of you.
Beautiful. Reminds us of the law of compensation. And Don, I know you have a lot to say about this principle.
Well, it's one of my favorites. Going the extra mile, it's a state of mind. It's who we are. It's reflected in everything we do. It goes back a long, long time. It's right out of the Bible. The Jews were complaining about being made beasts of burden by the Roman soldiers. And other than getting sympathy, they were told, when a man asks you to go a mile, go 20. And if you look up 20, it means twice. That means doing more than is required of you. And, of course, Hill tells us over and over again that we'll be rewarded with abundant harvest. We'll get much more back. And one of the books I'm working on, his old speeches, he tells the story of a Kansas farmer who had a thimble full of wheat seed and planted it. And when he harvested, of course, he got more, and he didn't consume it or sell it. He planted it until finally he had a tremendous crop worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if we planted one wheat seed and expected to get one wheat seed, but it'd be useless to plant it, we might as well go ahead and eat it. So I think over and over he gives us those stories throughout his speech, and some which have been recorded, some which are just written out, but just wonderful examples. I think we've kind of gone up in a society where people say, well, I'll start doing more when they pay me more. See, they got it backwards. The law of compensation of Emerson that Bill went on and on about was, we're not entitled to anything more until we do more. The sowing comes before the reaping. It's not that complicated, but for some reason or another, lots of folks are scared that's not my job or that's not what I'm getting paid for and what have you. He gave us all these things, and like the doctor said, not necessarily for that one act, but what can come to us as a result of the attitude that we presented. He told a story about the young guy in the department store working on the old lady and offering her a seat and so forth. Of course, it turns out to be Carnegie's mother, and he was just kind to her, which is the correct thing to do, not expecting no rewards. And, Phil, I've shared you the story recently. A man calls me from Nigeria, and you don't expect to get a lot of good news out of Nigeria. But I thought, well, he wants to talk to me, give him my phone number. He called me when I was out doing my evening walk. He sounded real nice. He told me his story. Well, I said, I'm impressed. Give me your address. I've got pencil and a 305 card in my pocket, which I've always got with me. I tried to write his name down. I did write it down, but I wasn't sure the address. I said, can you send me an email? He said, sure. I said, I'm going to send you a couple of books. He knew Mr. Stone and all these other characters. He'd read the stuff over and over again. It was obviously. I sent him a couple of books. And as a result, he called me back. He said he wanted to wire me some money. He's given me $200,000 so far, his donations, and $100 at that time, and then he gave me $50 last month. He's giving me $50 this month. I got a note from him. He said he wanted to be $250,000. He would wire the other $50 the next month. Over a kindness of giving someone 2 books and his background of reading Napoleon Hill. And we never send 2 books out expecting to get money back. But when we can, it just seems the right thing to do.
Amazing story. Tony or Dilip, do you want to add some personal stories and observations that you've experienced through this principle?
Well, I can share something that happened to me where I was a recipient of the laws that Napoleon Hill talks about. Word got out in my church that I was a speech coach and a trainer, and one of the members of my church choir happened to know the director of communications in my church conference and had told him that he should meet with me. So we had lunch together and we hit it off. And then about a week later, I got an email asking whether I would agree to review a sermon given by the bishop. It was on video, whether I would evaluate that she really wanted to polish up that sermon and was looking for feedback from someone who could help her get to the next level. So I said certainly, and I reviewed it. I wrote a careful evaluation of a sermon, what was good, how it might be improved, giving some suggestions, sent it. And then a week later, I heard back from the director of communications saying, oh, the bishop found that extremely helpful. In fact, she's already using some of my suggestions. She wants to know how much you charge, what your fee is. And I said, there is no charge. That is my gift to her for the valuable service she's giving others. And I'm honoring her ministry by doing this for free. So I just received a nice thank you. And then about a month later, I got a formal letter from the bishop saying that I had been appointed to the Board of Ordained Ministry if I would accept it, and I would serve on the sermon team. And the sermon team evaluates sermons given by seminary students who are on the pastoral track and not compensated. It's something that people do as a service. So I said, certainly I'd be happy to serve on that. But meanwhile, I had been coaching pastors on and off, realizing that they didn't really have the money to pay me. I would frequently do that for free. But I had ideas for really doing it in a much bigger and better way if there was funding. Well, when I was on this Board of Ordained Ministry, I found out that they have an educational fund for pastors, and I was invited to send a proposal. So I sent the proposal in, it was accepted, and lo and behold, now there was full funding for a program that I've been doing for 7 years. It's called Preaching with Power, and 50 pastors in my church conference have gone through this program. Next month, district superintendent from this district who sent her pastors to me for coaching is joining forces with me, and we are doing a 2-day retreat. So it all happened because I said, I will go the extra mile for someone who needs this help, who really could benefit from it, and not really seeking compensation. The universe has a way of coming back to you, and as Tony said, sometimes it's not the same person who does it, but somewhere the universe is structured to give back, because you cannot give without receiving.
Beautiful story. Powerful. And Tony, I know that you're not short on stories on how going the extra mile has benefited you and your observations.
2 quick ones. In Napoleon Hill's book, where he talks about going the extra mile, he mentioned the story about Thomas Edison's only partner. And as I was reading through that, it brought to mind Rick Barrera, who was living in Buffalo. This was back in the early 80s. And in the 80s, my speaking career was really going strong. And he contacted me, as did many, many people in those days, and wanted to sort of partner with me. But everybody else who would call would say, hey, if you have any extra bookings, would you throw some my way? Rick was very different. Rick said, look, I want to work with you guys. I'm living in Buffalo. I will move out there. I will do whatever you want me to do as long as you want me to do it, just for the benefit of hopefully one day working side by side with you. So he moved to San Diego. He immediately, instead of asking us for business, he got me a speech with big national company, a full fee speech didn't want anything in return. He says, look, I'm going to give before I get. And then he sat by my desk every day listening to my phone calls, watching what I did. And here's the funny thing. Sometimes I get a little impatient. I'm what they call a high D, a very dominant, driving director type. When I made 3 phone calls to a prospect, if I did not get through or they did not call me back, I'd get upset and I'd take the lead card that I would put together and I'd throw it in the garbage. And then Rick would go into the garbage, pull that out, and then he would persist with that client. And one of those clients, he actually turned into a consulting project worth over $1 million. But the key was he constantly gave before he got. The second very personal situation is my mother. My mother always instilled in me, now this is a little play on words, she always instilled in me to go the extra inch. Now, isn't that interesting? Going an extra mile sometimes is far. I mean, think about how far a mile is. And she was just playing with words here, but she said, you know, what you need to do, Anthony, she called me Anthony, is go the extra inch. And her whole thing was each and every day in each and every area of your life, whether it is financial, mental, physical, social, spiritual, it doesn't matter. Every day, go an extra inch. Try to improve yourself in each of those areas just a tiny bit. Learn one more word a day. Do one more push-up or sit-up a day. Give one more compliment a day. Just go an extra inch. And she said, if you go enough extra inches, eventually you go the extra mile.
Yeah, absolutely. Powerful. And Don, you were sharing off the record a similar story of a conversation you had with someone along the lines of what Tony just shared.
Oh, gosh, there's been so many of them. I'm working with one of the college students, and she's in here working this morning. And there's so many of them. Some of them really touch your heart. As the doctor said, you're not looking for another attorney. It just seemed the thing to do. And one of them, I got a call one day from the college, and, of course, I'm located on campus. I got a call from administration, said a little girl and her mother there was wanting to see me. Of course, immediately I'm thinking they're wanting help for the scholarship. They're wanting some money or something other, or their relatives or something other want to go to school here. I hear from that. I said, is it some relative or what is it? He said, no. I said, the little girl said, she's from Kentucky. He said, you sent her a book one time. And said her and her mother would really like to come by your office and see you. And I said, well, I got a lunch appointment. But tell you what, I'll cut it short. Tell them to be here at 1 o'clock at my office, and I'll see them. Well, the cute little girl comes in. She looked like she's 12 or 14 years old, but she's getting ready to graduate from high school. She's got her mother with her. So talked to her a while and then see what she wanted. She said she would like to go to college and go pre-pharmacy, and I give her a couple more books. And I said, well, the first step you done is you put an application in. She said, no, we've not put one in. I said, well, you got to put an application in. And I said, you put an application in. Tell the Mindy Financial Office when you file application to call me. And so I don't know how many days it was. I got a call and said, Don, this little girl from Kentucky said she put her application in. And they told me to call you. And I said, I really don't know anything about her. She seemed nice and what have you. I said, how is it? He said, oh, we got problems. And I said, what do you mean we got problems? She got bad grades? He said, no. Said she's a straight A student. He said, they don't have any money. I said, well, that's no problem. I said, now, Rusty, I don't ask for a lot of favor, but you know what scholarships I've set up. You know, we got the Hill Scholarship and the Lamberts, my relatives. I said, you can go to them. You know ones I'm connected with. I said, you just go down through there, and I normally don't ask for nothing. I said, I'm just impressed with the little girl. I said, she comes out of a coal mining camp, and if she don't have no money, I'm impressed. So I said, you write down what she's eligible for, and then you call me back. He called me back, probably an hour or something like that, and he said, here's the Hill Scholarships, this amount, and she goes down the line. I said, Rusty, it's been a long time since I went to college. What does that mean? He said, Don, that means that she maintains her grades. This will pay all of her costs of going to college except for her books. And I said, well, give me the phone number off that, and I'll call her mother and talk to her. And so I called her mother and told her what we had arranged, and her mother started crying and said, I can't believe it. And I've not talked to the little girl since, but I have placed a couple of calls, and they said she's doing fine. So to me, I mean, that was no monetary reward, no statue, no nothing except the satisfaction on. I've got this saying is, we're going to save the world one child at a time. And for that day, that was the one child as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's what we're supposed to do anytime we have a chance to do it without expecting anything back. And I'm sure I'll be rewarded in some shape, form, or fashion, if nothing else, just to get an email from a little girl someday saying she finished school and wants to thank me. So there's so many of those stories, and they're all not always about a lot of money. Sometimes they're just knowing that you made a little bit of difference in somebody's life.
Wonderful. And I guess we could just go on and on and on about stories, and there's no shortage of that. And Dilip, I know that you have an affinity and a great interest for the subject of theology. In fact, you've gone back to continue your education in the pursuit for, I think, a doctorate in theology. Now,
actually, a master in divinity.
A master's in divinity. Forgive me for that. Yes. But very interesting. And on that note, Don touched on it about the origins of where that term, going the extra mile, came from. And with your knowledge, why do you feel Jesus taught his disciples to go the extra mile? And from what we understand, that's where the whole term originated. Could you give us some insights on what was in Christ's mind when he was teaching that principle?
Thinking about that, Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it abundantly. And Christ's expectation of his followers is to express abundant living, and part of that expression is abundant giving. Christ did not have a scarcity mentality. He had an abundance mentality. Remember when the disciples were tossed to and fro in the boat when the storm hit them when they were at sea? Jesus asked, why are you afraid, O ye of little faith? And when things go wrong, we tend to panic. And for Jesus, the world is full of opportunity, abundance, and if we truly believe that, then we have to live that out. One of the things that I remember from my childhood, something that my mother planted in me, was I came from a family of 7 children, born and raised in Sri Lanka. My mom was a great organizer. She had a bulletin board there in the house, and she would put various things that we needed to pay attention to. One of them was a card. Monthly, there would be a saying that we would just see. And it's amazing how when a child sees something and keeps seeing it, the child tends to remember it. So this statement was from one of the verses in the Bible, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. Mm-hmm. Okay, I remember it. I remember her handwriting, this little card on that bulletin board. And what it planted in me was the old saying, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. My parents did not believe in any slipshod work. They expected us to do our best, always. And I saw this not just in the words that my mother put, but in the way my mom and dad lived their lives. And then I want to share with you something that's related to this, that when we go the extra mile, it becomes infectious, and other people pick it up. As you mentioned, I do some work at Central Penn College. The college president, Todd Milano, exemplifies this going the extra mile. He takes great pride in the beauty of the campus. And several times I've been out with him, and he sees a little piece of paper or a can or soda bottle that some careless person has dropped by and not put it in the trash. He will walk 15, 20, 30 feet, go pick that up, and then look for the nearest trash can and pop it in. It's just something he does automatically. Again, another example is when people need to be commended, he does not just send them an email. As far as possible, he'll try to get a photo of them, and then he'll have his assistant create a photo note card, and then he will handwrite a personal thank you. I myself have probably 15 to 20 of these cards that he has sent me over the last 9 years. This is infectious. So I'm finding that I'm writing thank you notes, handwriting instead of shooting an email, because when you go the extra mile, I think the person who has received that extra jacket, person who has received that extra favor, feels so abundantly blessed that he or she now wants to pass this on. It's something that's passed on and on. Just living with people who live the extra mile creates that spirit, that mental attitude that other people catch.
When the doctor mentioned note cards, I've used those for many, many years. And just recently, I'm coming in the office. I've been to the bank, and my assistant's already here. And she said, Don, there's a young lady on the phone, got a real accent. I can't understand her. So I get on the phone, and the little girl says, Don, this is Olga in St. Petersburg. Of course, she's talking about St. Petersburg, Russia. And I said, what time is it? She said, it's 5 p.m. That's the time difference. Well, it was 9 here. And so I said, what can I do for you? She said, did you get the wire for the money? I said, oh, yes, it came a couple of days ago. We got the wire for the advance. Thank you very much. She said, oh, that card you sent me, it's so pretty. It's sitting on my desk. Said, everybody thinks it's so pretty. What the doctor talked about, I sent her a handwritten note card with a picture on it. And so I've had that habit back when I was in the banking business, and I don't think my competitors ever figured it out. I never left the office without sending out some note cards. I don't care if I'm late or what. One particular day, I walked over to the teller window, and I said, anything happen unusual at a customer or anything? I said, I got to send out a couple more messages. And one of them said, oh, yeah, I said, this little lady come in here and said she had a whole bag of change. I said that I rolled it for her, and she opened up an account, and she said it was for her grandson. She was going to start saving money for him to go to school. And I said, well, give me her name and address. So she gave me her name and address. I wrote her a little card thanking her for opening up an account and what have you. And I got a phone call, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 days after that. And she said, I just wanted to call and thank you for that card. She said, I was just telling everybody, I can't believe I got a card from the president of the bank because I come in there and dropped a bunch of pennies and a girl helped me roll them. Said, I just can't believe it. I can't get over it. And to me, that was better than a full-page ad. Because she would call and she said, oh, I sent so-and-so down there. They got a lot of money. And she'd tell me, she said, one of my nephews, he's done real good in the coal business. I told him to bring some money down there and deposit with you. So just like we've been saying over and over again, it seems like a little thing, but it's a little thing that can be a big thing.
Absolutely. And, Tony, you have studied corporate examples of companies that have really made the distinction from their competition by going the extra mile. I think Nordstrom's is a good example of that. Would you care to share some insight on what you've seen in the corporate world?
Well, there's no question that companies that go the extra mile, especially in terms of delivering, as Napoleon Hill says, the quantity and quality of service with the right attitude, are the ones that excel. Nordstrom is a classic example. In fact, Napoleon Hill even uses that example of Nordstrom, where they have this return policy that many people would think, well, dishonest people are going to take advantage of it because they'll take back anything, anytime. One of the classic stories, and nobody knows if this is true or not, was a store manager taking back tires from a widow who swore that her husband bought the tires at Nordstrom when, in fact, Nordstrom never sold tires. But they took it back, and it's become a legend, one of these urban myths or maybe an urban truth about how far Nordstrom would go. And as a result, because of the legend of Nordstrom service, many people, when a Nordstrom store would open, would go in there just to experience the Nordstrom service. So it really did pay back. I want to talk about one of the formulas that Napoleon Hill has. He calls it the extra mile formula, and it's Q1 plus Q2 plus MA equals C, which is the quality of service rendered plus the quantity of service rendered plus the mental attitude. Now, this is the key. In which it's rendered equals your compensation. And one of the things that I have found is every so often you'll find companies that do deliver the quantity and quality of service, but do it begrudgingly and do it only after people have fought and argued and complained, and then they eventually give in. And even though they delivered the quantity and quality of service, because they dragged their feet, because they were reluctant to do it quickly with the right attitude, it almost had the opposite effect of making a customer happy. If I have to fight for something, even though I get it, I'm not as happy as if it's given to me with the proper mental attitude.
Once I got the Sam Walton Award for community service, and the story on Sam was he was visiting the store, which he visits them all every year. He was visiting the store, and this lady brought some shoes in that wasn't up to expectations, and he apologized to her for them selling inferior merchandise, and he agreed to look into it. But he also told her to go back there and pick her out some socks and so forth, and he never questioned her or anything like Nordstrom. He apologized for causing her the trouble of coming in and buying shoes, and he took care of her and told her to pick her out some socks that they had there. And so he did it with the right attitude rather than saying, how long you had these shoes and you sure you've not been out in the weather? Well, he destroyed the whole bit of taking care of the customer if you questioned them and put them through the ringer. So Sam was great at it, and of course you can see he built a firm that employs 1.5 million people today all over the world. That's what he taught to he called them associates. So it is important, and that mental attitude is a tremendous part of that. We call it the extra mile formula. But while I'm on journey, it's on my mind is I was around W. Clement Stone, who I think the guy was a billionaire. He's the reason I got the job I got today. And I've got his personal books. One of his books he read was Magnificent Obsession by Lloyd Douglas, which was made into a movie. It was a novel, but his copy, he must have read it so many times. He underlined about every line in the thing. But it was a story that was basically, as Stone said, going the extra mile. And he said the philosophy, like pay it forward, the idea that a good deed's received not need to be paid back by the doer of the deed to a needing person in the future. So if you do a good deed for John Brown, it don't mean John Brown's going to good deed back for you. The philosophy behind it was something that Stone practiced, and he gave good examples over and over of doing that.
Someone said, and I don't know who it was, maybe it was Mother Teresa, I'm not sure, that says, do something every day for someone who can never pay you back for it, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And I think that really goes back to the mindset that going the extra mile is not about a tactical approach that's saying, okay, if I do this, then my expectations is I'm going to get so much in return. That's not what it's about, is it, Dilip?
Absolutely. Listening to Don talk reminded me, he mentioned the mental attitude. These are really practical things. For anyone who's listening to this audio, we are not talking about being taken advantage of. We are talking about life-altering, powerful principles. I found this out firsthand when I was selling books door to door. I was in this little town in Tennessee. We were required to start selling at 7:59 a.m. Had to be the first knock on the door, and we would finish at 9:30 at night. And I would go around with this little case of sample books to show people. I remember one of the things that really kept me going through this grueling program was Og Mandino's book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. I'm sure that all of you have read that.
Yeah.
Powerful book. And my favorite section of that book was the scroll on love. And it starts by saying, I think it's scroll mark 2, I will greet this day with love in my heart. Actually, another person on my team, I had recruited a team of college students. He and I would meet at McDonald's at about 7:15 in the morning. We would have breakfast, and either he or I would read a section from Og Mandino's book to the other person. And my favorite was this. And when I heard that, I was ready to go and knock on that first door, because it reminded me that it's not about selling books to people. It's about providing a powerful service that people's children need. And so I had to learn that it didn't really matter how people responded to me, but am I treating them with love in my heart? One of the greatest learning experiences I had. So the idea is that mental attitude is not something that you just do because that's what's expected, but it should be bubbling forth from the heart. And then it can just change everything, change your whole outlook. I remember one day I had no sales at all. Okay, pretty discouraging. So the next day I'm out there again, 7:59 till 5 p.m., no sales. Okay, my spirit is dragging here. At 5 o'clock I knock on a door, and I hear a little girl comes to the door, and then she shouts back and says, "Daddy, it's one of those boys with books." I thought, oh, they're used to this. And then I hear this man calling back saying, "Tell him to come on into the kitchen." So I go into the kitchen, and there's this family at dinner. They're just finishing their dinner. And Instead of asking me about the books, the man engages me in conversation. Wants to know about me and what am I doing and what my major in college is and so forth. Took a real interest in me. And soon I felt like I had known them for a long time. And then he offered me dessert, and they ended up buying books. I think it was about $60 sale for me. For someone who had gone without a sale for 1.5 days, this was huge. And that so empowered me that then I went on to sell. Instead of 9:30 p.m., 10 p.m. was my last sale. Ended up with more than $200 worth of books sold. Now, this was back in the mid-'70s. So that was a great day for me. And what I discovered again was that this mental attitude we are talking about is not something that you do when everything is going right. It's something you do all the time, regardless of circumstances. So these were lessons that were really driven into me by that experience.
Powerful. Powerful. Tony, how does somebody create the essence of that formula that you shared with us? How do you create a mindset of wanting to deliver better quality and greater quantity?
Most of the time it starts from the top. Just like one of the examples given about Walton, it has to start from the top. There has to be a passion on the part of the leader that is pushed down through the ranks, from the leader to the senior management to the middle management down to the line of people. A very personal story is how I run my business. As a motivational speaker, or a professional speaker, one of my key programs is on customer loyalty and customer retention. And in order to do that, you have to deliver a great quantity and quality of service with the proper attitude. I mean, I live that. It's unfortunate that there's a handful of speakers who do not walk their talk, if you know what I mean. They deliver a great program, but do not practice it themselves in real life. Well, in my business, I am always telling my people to jump through hoops, to do whatever it takes to please the customer. We have rave reviews about my employees because I tell them that old saying, the customer isn't always right, but the customer is always the customer. And as long as we accept somebody as a customer, we need to treat them that way. Now, have I ever fired a customer? Yes, I have. It doesn't happen very frequently, but the customers that we have, I tell my people, never say no. Always look for a way to jump through hoops and provide the quality and quantity of service with the right attitude. And I tell my people, when somebody asks for an unusual request, you don't have to say, well, I have to ask my boss, I have to ask Tony. If you can justify it in your own mind that it's reasonable, do it. Don't ask me. I said more often than not, rather than asking me if you can do something, I'd rather you ask me if you can't. Ask me before you say no to a customer, because I want my customers to have incredible experiences, exceeding the customer's expectation. But it starts at the top, Phil. It has to be the leader, the owner, the CEO, whatever it is, and then drilled down over and over again and practiced and lived and breathed by that owner so that people can see, well, it's not just what he says, but it's also what he does. We don't want them to be seen as do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah.
So that's the key.
It's interesting. When I was at an advertising company and I went into a McDonald's franchise to meet this owner who actually owns several McDonald's franchises. And I asked for his name and where I could find him. And there he was with rubber gloves and a mop mopping the floor. He was enormously successful, enormously wealthy, but he was scrubbing, he was mopping, and he was leading, as you put it, Tony, through example. He didn't have to do that, but what a great inspiration of what it means to lead. And as you put it, people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Well, we've just been cruising along. If we were to identify, let's say, a good round number of 5 of the outstanding benefits of going the extra mile, maybe each one of you can take one and we can briefly go through them. What would they be? Don, could you share what you feel is one of the great outstanding benefits?
Going the extra mile to me is we do it and it becomes a habit. And as I've said over and over again, these guys have all heard it, we first make our habits, and then our habits make us. It's pretty simple, either good or bad. We go the extra mile. It just becomes a habit. It's just what we do. It's just like our attitude. We're not looking for something other in return necessarily. It just seems the thing to do. And, of course, I love the part that Hill talked about, some of the things like it presents opportunity for us. I can remember being called by a guy, and I was actually in the finance business. This guy called and said, "Hey, Mr. Green," he said, "I've started the bank up. Said, I've heard several names. I need a second person in the bank, someone who could groom to be a president of a bank someday." And he said, "I've been told by several people that you're the person." And I said, "Well, I'm finishing college. I'm going to school tonight." I said, "I would be glad to talk to you." And he said, "What day could you come over?" I told him, "Mr. Brown, I can't do that." I said, "I'm being paid by these people. I'll have to do it on the weekend." And he said, "Well, okay." And so we set up an appointment for me to come over on a Saturday afternoon. It was about a 2-hour drive. And I drove over, and he said, "Well, first off," he said, "I appreciate you not taking off from your present job to go look for another job." He said, "I wouldn't like for someone to do me that way." And I said, "Well, they're paying me, and they've been good to me, but I'm looking out for myself and my family if it's an opportunity." But I remember something from that conversation that day. And he's still a friend. He's a mentor, except for these two guys. One of the brightest guys I was ever around. And he's a successful entrepreneur. He started banks. He's got the best Arabian horses in the world. I can go on and on. Manufacturing plants. He's an entrepreneur if there ever was one. But Jim told me, he said, "Do you know at work you do a little extra one day? Probably won't nobody notice." He said, "You might do a little extra every day for a week. Nobody might not notice it." But he said, "You keep on doing that, you'll see success that the other people only dream about." And that's been, golly, too many years ago. That's been many, many years ago. And I remember that. He said, if you keep on doing that, it'll separate the successful people from those that only dream of success.
Beautifully said. So what you're saying is that going the extra mile will create inevitably opportunities for you that otherwise you wouldn't have. And that's beautiful. Dilip, you want to take us through another one of the benefits that comes with going the extra mile?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And that is this. When someone asks, what is the benefit of going the extra mile? My first thought is that you will make your life count. You will make your life count. Nobody just wants to go through the motions in life, even though many, many people do. They want to live their life in such a way that when they are gone, that little spot in history that was their life means something. You're adding significance.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a marvelous keynote, one of the finest keynotes that I have ever heard at the Toastmasters International Convention this August. It was given by Joel Manby, who is the CEO of Hershend Enterprises, the largest family-owned entertainment business. They have theme parks around the country. And he had been featured on TV in one of the episodes of Undercover Boss. You may have seen one of these, where the boss disguises and goes as one of the workers just to understand, what they're going through, right? And they actually showed a clip of that. It's powerful. And he said Hershend Enterprises actually, as their company policy, they practice love. And he said, most people blink and say, what do you mean love? What does love have to do in business? Aren't they different? And he says everything to do with business. And he went on to convince that crowd of about 1,000 people there about how love works. In fact, he has a book. The title is Love Works by Joel Manby. I encourage anyone who can to get hold of that book, and I'm halfway through the book right now. He said what they do is, and here he's speaking to a secular audience, but he said we actually embody and we practice the principles given in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind, it is not jealous, love does not brag, it is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly, it does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. He demonstrated how this is done in the company. For example, they have set up a special fund for people who are having financial difficulties. And what they do is invite the employees to donate something, and the company matches that. And this fund has been used several times to help employees who have had difficulties. And you know what has happened is the employees love working there because they feel valued. People don't leave once they come. They've had people who actually have come looking for work while they have better paying jobs just because they're attracted by the culture of Hershey Enterprises. So what's the benefit? You will make your life significant. And if you're a corporation, a company, you will make work there significant for the people who are working there.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Meaningful difference. And Tony, if you were to take your favorite benefit, what would that be?
Becoming indispensable. When you go the extra mile, it shows people how much you care, and they become, a word that I use, they become an apostle of yours, a raving fan, a business advocate. They're out there in the marketplace preaching the gospel for you. So I really believe that when we go the extra mile, the whole attitude of what goes around comes around, when we deliver without expecting anything in return, when we exceed expectations, we become indispensable to our customers, our clients, our employees. There's a loyalty that's built that's very difficult to break. So it's becoming indispensable.
Beautiful. If there are 3 jewels to be taken from this program, it's what's just been opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't have. 2, as Dilip pointed out, it gives you tremendous significance and meaning, knowing that what you're doing is profoundly more meaningful than a simple task, and the indispensability of what you're doing, as Tony pointed out, just tremendous. And I think we can spend all day just examining the benefits, but could you believe that our time together is coming to an end? Time flies when you're having fun.
I learned a lot. I can't wait to get that book, Love Work.
Yes, I learned a lot, too.
I learned a lot from these guys.
Now I'm so pumped up, I don't think I can go to sleep tonight. The energy level is so high.
It's just been a beautiful interview, and I just want to remind our listeners that they've just gotten a small taste of the profound knowledge and expertise that our guests have brought to our forum. And to learn more, you can certainly go to Alessandra.com, where you'll find Tony's extensive products and services. Alessandra.com, very easy to find on the Internet. You can also go to Dr. Dilip. Information on Dr. Dilip Abisakara and his extensive services. And, of course, the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We've just been so blessed to have the chairman of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, Don Green, with us today. And you can go to naphill.org to find out more about that. So with that said, gentlemen, any final thoughts on this empowering lessons that we discussed that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Hey, Phil, I'm going to put my 2 cents that they left and what the doctor said about Love Works. Remind me, both of them went into missionary work, and one of them was hitting me up for some money to build some houses in Belize. And he asked me about keep on working. I said, yeah, Jerry, when we leave this world, believe me, we may get a statue, somebody may talk about us, we may be remembered or whatever. But if they do, it will not be for what we got out of life. It'll be for what we gave back. And he said, that's the reason I'm going back to Belize next month. That's what I'm trying to do. And I said, well, I appreciate what you're doing. I'm sure a lot of other people.
Dilip, amen. Dilip, any final thought?
Yes. Just in case someone is thinking, well, I'll go the extra mile when things are right for me, I have to remind them that Mother Teresa, one of the favorite quotes I have is from Mother Teresa, which says, we can't all do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And every one of us, regardless of our title, our position, our social status, it does not matter. Every one of us can do small things with great love. Extra mile. That is going the extra mile. It will transform your world. I know because it has transformed mine.
Thus, it speaks to the attitude in which the second mile is delivered. And Tony, take us home with your final thought.
Well, it's an old saying that I think everybody should remember, and that is give without remembering, accept without forgetting. Very simple saying that has a very powerful payoff.
Wisdom. Well, thank you. Wisdom. Jewels of wisdom. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And if I may just add my 2 cents worth, there's an anonymous quote that says, there are no traffic jams in the second mile. And I think it speaks to the distinction that you were talking about, Tony. Gentlemen, thank you so much for blessing us with your wisdom, your experiences, and insight. It's been just a tremendous time together, and we look forward to following you through your websites and your work. And God bless you all.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.